When the world grows quiet and the rain begins to fall, the night carries secrets that few dare to hear. Hidden in the darkness are stories, true accounts whispered through time, that blur the line between the living and the shadows that linger after. These are not tales of fiction, but echoes of real experiences, told by those who swear they felt the cold brush of the unknown, heard the footsteps in an empty hall, or saw eyes watching them from the dark. In this collection, you will hear chilling stories of haunted houses, restless spirits, eerie encounters, and moments where reality bent just enough to let something otherworldly slip through. Each story unfolds slowly, with the steady rhythm of rainfall to carry you deeper into the atmosphere, creating the perfect balance of fear and calm. Let the sound of the storm outside soothe you, even as the stories remind you of the mysteries that live in the night. You may find yourself drifting between wakefulness and dreams, carried by the rain, haunted by the whispers of the past. Tonight, the stories are waiting. Will you listen? Cloud with Rain Ghost. The storm begins. Cloud with Rain Ghost. The night had just begun, and outside, rain poured steadily from a sky heavy with secrets. The air was cool, the rhythm of the storm a constant backdrop to the silence of the sleeping world. But within that silence, strange stories lingered, stories whispered from one soul to another, carrying the weight of encounters that could not be explained. This first tale comes from a traveler who had been driving alone on a desolate road late at night. The rain was falling much like tonight, thick, endless, blurring the world into shadows and shapes. With headlights cutting through the darkness, he saw what looked like a woman standing at the edge of the road, soaked, motionless, her face hidden beneath her dripping hair. Against all reason, he stopped, feeling both pity and unease. But when he stepped out of the car, the figure was gone. Only rain fell where she had stood. Confused, he climbed back into his seat, heart pounding, only to glance in the rear-view mirror, and there she was, sitting in the back seat, silent, watching. As you listen to this story, let the sound of the rain calm your mind, even as your imagination wanders into the shadows. Tonight, the storm is just beginning. The old house on the hill, derelict house, cloud with rain. The rain had not stopped all night, and with every drop that struck the earth, the atmosphere grew heavier, darker. On the outskirts of a small village, there stood an abandoned house at the top of a hill. Its windows were shattered, its roof sagging, and vines curled around its crumbling walls like veins of some forgotten creature. Locals said the house had been empty for decades, but no one dared go near it after sunset. One traveler, seeking shelter from the storm, ignored the warnings. With the rain drenching his clothes, he pushed open the broken gate, the metal creaking in protest. The door to the house was already ajar, as if waiting for him. Inside, the air was colder, filled with the faint smell of mold and something else. Something metallic. As thunder rolled across the sky, he lit a small lantern and explored the rooms. Faded wallpaper hung like torn fabric, an old portrait stared down with eyes that seemed almost alive. In the corner of the main hall, he noticed a rocking chair gently moving back and forth, though there was no wind. The rain outside masked many sounds, but not the whisper that floated from the shadows, "You shouldn't have come here." The chair stopped moving. The house had been waiting. The woman at the window, cloud with rain ghost. The storm raged on, heavy raindrops tapping against the cracked glass of the house's broken windows. The traveler, clutching his lantern tighter, stepped into a narrow hallway. The wooden floor groaned beneath his weight, as though the house resented his presence. Halfway down the corridor, he froze. At the far end, beyond the flicker of his lantern's weak flame, was a window. Lightning lit up the night outside, and in that split second of brightness, he saw her. A pale woman standing at the glass. Her hair clung to her face as though it were wet, her eyes hollow and endless. The traveler's heart pounded, but when he blinked, the figure was gone. He moved closer, cautiously, his breath uneven, the thunder outside rumbling like a warning. Then came the sound, soft at first, almost lost in the rain, fingernails scratching against the windowpane. Screech, screech. Slow, deliberate, as though whoever, or whatever, it was wanted him to hear. Lightning struck again, and she was there once more. This time, her face was pressed against the glass, her eyes wide and unblinking. And then, as the thunder cracked, she whispered a single word through the window, her lips moving slowly, almost tenderly. "Stay." The rain pounded harder. The traveler could not move. The empty room cloud with rain ghost. The whisper still echoed in the traveler's ears. "Stay." His lantern flickered. Weakly, as though even the flame itself wanted to abandon him. Summoning his courage, he stepped closer to the window, but the woman was gone. Only raindrops slid down the glass now, streaking like silent tears. He exhaled shakily and turned. A door stood ajar to his right, its hinges creaking slightly as if it had been pushed a moment before. He hadn't noticed it earlier. The traveler hesitated, then slowly pressed it open. Inside was a bedroom, long abandoned. The wallpaper had peeled away, revealing rotting boards beneath. An iron bed frame sat crooked in the corner, the mattress sagging with dampness and time. A child's doll lay on the floor, its porcelain face cracked, one glassy eye missing. The traveler crouched to pick it up, but froze when he heard the soft tap, tap, tap of footsteps across the wooden floorboards, except they weren't his. They circled the room, slow and deliberate, though no one was there. His lantern flame sputtered. Shadows on the walls lengthened, moving against the natural order of light. Then, on the far wall above the bed, he noticed something he hadn't seen before, words scratched deep into the plaster. She waits at the window. The traveler's chest tightened. He glanced back to the doorway, and his blood ran cold. The doll he had left on the floor was now sitting neatly on the bed, its cracked face smiling faintly in the trembling lantern light. The first encounter cloud with rain ghost. The traveler's breath caught in his throat. His trembling hands tightened on the lantern, though its light did little to push back the creeping dark. The doll's faint smile seemed wider now, unnatural, as if mocking his fear. The sound returned, tap, 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 circling him again, this time closer, sharper, as though barefoot steps pressed against the damp wood. He spun around, searching desperately, but the room remained empty. A sudden chill swept across his neck, like icy fingers brushing his skin. He staggered back, his heartbeat thunderous in the silence. The lantern flickered violently, shadows stretching long and jagged against the peeling wallpaper. Then, he heard it. A woman's voice. Soft. Whispering. Close. Why did you come here? The traveler froze, every instinct screaming to run, but his feet refused to move. Slowly, his gaze lifted toward the cracked mirror leaning against the wall. His reflection stared back, pale and shaking, except he wasn't alone. Behind his shoulder, the faint outline of a woman took shape. Her hair hung in wet strands, her face obscured, but her hollow eyes glowed faintly, like dying embers in the dark. The traveler spun around, nothing. The room was empty. Yet, when he turned back to the mirror, she was still there. Closer now. And then, the whisper again, chilling and final. You should not have come. The lantern went out. The lantern's silence new moon cloud with rain ghost. Darkness swallowed everything. The lantern's flame had died as though snuffed out by unseen hands, leaving the traveler stranded in the heavy stillness of the abandoned house. His breaths came shallow and fast, each one clouding in the cold air that seeped through the broken boards of the walls. Outside, rain lashed against the windows, the steady rhythm mixing with the relentless tap, tap, tap now echoing inside the room. It no longer circled, it approached. Each step pressed deeper, heavier, as though something was dragging itself across the floorboards toward him. The traveler fumbled with the lantern, shaking it violently, whispering frantic prayers under his breath. Sparks flickered but quickly died. Then, in the dark, he heard a sound so soft it could have been imagined, a breath, warm and wet, exhaled against his ear. Stay. He froze. His legs trembled, yet still refused to move. Slowly, he turned his head toward the source of the whisper. Nothing. Only shadows. But then his eyes caught movement in the mirror once more. The woman was there again. Not distant, not hazy, this time, her face was clear. Pale skin stretched tight over sharp bones, lips torn as though stitched into a jagged smile. Her hollow eyes seemed endless, drawing him in. Water dripped from her hair, pooling at her bare feet, yet no sound echoed as she stepped closer inside the reflection. But here was the horror: the floor beneath him was wet too. Icy droplets slid across his shoes, trickling upward, as if the very water from her reflection was seeping into his reality. The traveler stumbled back, heart pounding, when he realized the truth. The mirror was no longer just reflecting. It was opening, crossing the threshold ghost cloud with rain. The mirror trembled in its frame, as though something heavy pressed against the glass from the other side. Cracks spidered across its surface, but instead of shattering outward, the shards seemed to bend inward, like water rippling. The traveler could not look away. The woman in the reflection leaned forward, her face impossibly close now. Her jagged smile widened, stretching far beyond human limits, and the sound of grinding bone echoed in the silence. Then came the hand. Pale, thin, dripping endlessly, it pushed through the glass as though the mirror were made of liquid. Cold air burst from the surface, filling the room with the scent of wet soil and rot. The traveler's body screamed to run, but his legs were rooted to the floor. His chest rose and fell with ragged gasps, every breath shallower than the last. He could hear the rain outside pounding harder, the storm itself seeming to respond to her arrival. The woman's hand clutched the wooden frame, her nails long and black, scratching deep grooves into the rotting wood. A second hand emerged, followed by the crown of her head. Strands of soaked black hair slid over her face, masking her hollow eyes for a moment, until she snapped her head up and locked her gaze with his. The mirror wailed. A sound like thousands of voices crying out in unison filled the room. The traveler dropped to his knees, clutching his ears, the noise rattling his skull. And yet, beneath the chaos, her whisper cut through like a knife. You opened the way, now you cannot close it. The last piece of the mirror gave way, and she stepped fully into the room. Face to face I cloud with rain ghost. The storm raged outside, lightning flashing just enough to illuminate the impossible scene before him. The figure, no longer bound to the mirror, stood tall, her soaked dress clinging to her crooked frame, dripping water that pooled at her bare feet. Every drop echoed louder than the rain itself, as though the room had become a chamber of dread. The traveler crawled backward, his hands slipping on the damp, splintered floor. His pulse thundered in his ears. She moved closer, not walking but gliding, her feet never lifting from the ground. With every step, the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch toward her, as if drawn by her presence. Her face was clearer now. Hollow eyes burned with a dim, unnatural glow, and her mouth, too wide, too sharp, hung open in a grin that did not belong to the living. When she spoke, her voice layered with countless tones, men, women, children, all tangled together in one ghastly chorus. I waited so long. The traveler's back hit the wall. Nowhere left to run. His breath came fast and shallow, his fingers searching desperately for anything, something, that could protect him. The only sound between her words was the relentless drumming of rain on the roof. Suddenly, the lantern beside him flickered violently, casting grotesque shapes on the walls. For a moment, he thought he saw other figures moving in the shadows, hands reaching, faces pressing forward, as if dozens of spirits had come through with her. She stopped just inches from him, lowering her head so her face hovered level with his own. Her breath, cold as the grave, brushed across his skin. "Tell me," she whispered, her lips almost touching his ear. "Do you believe now?" The touch of the unknown ghost cloud with rain. The traveler's throat tightened, his breath caught in his chest. He wanted to scream, to shout, to pray, but no sound would leave his lips. The figure leaned closer, her hollow eyes staring so deep into him that it felt like she was pulling his very soul forward. Her hand, pale and dripping with rainwater that shouldn't exist inside, slowly reached toward his chest. He pressed himself harder against the wall, as if the wood might somehow open and let him escape. But there was no escape. The moment her fingers touched his shirt, an unnatural cold surged into him. Not the chill of a draft or a winter storm. This was deeper, piercing through his flesh and settling into his bones. His heart faltered, skipping beats, his vision blurring as though the world itself dimmed around him. Whispers filled the room, hundreds of voices, chanting words he couldn't understand. Some sounded angry, some mournful, others almost laughing. The traveler felt the weight of generations pressing down on him, as if all those who had vanished in this cursed place were now reaching through her into him. Suddenly, his lantern burst with a sharp crack, plunging the room into total darkness. Only the glow of her hollow eyes remained. He could no longer tell if he was still in the cabin, or somewhere else entirely, drawn into her world, a place between the living and the dead. His body trembled violently. He wanted to resist, to fight, but the cold drained his strength, pulling him into paralysis. Her whisper returned, softer this time, almost soothing. "You're mine now." And with that, the rain outside grew louder, almost deafening, as though the storm itself was mourning what had just begun. Pulled into the storm cloud with rain ghost. The traveler's body went limp as the ghostly hand pressed deeper into his chest, not tearing flesh, but sinking through him as if his body were nothing but mist. He gasped, a strangled cry escaping his lips, but no one was there to hear. The cabin around him began to blur, its walls melting into shadows that swirled like smoke. The floorboards rippled under his boots as though the entire house were dissolving into the storm outside. He blinked, desperate to cling to reality, but the rain he had once heard on the roof was now crashing all around him. He wasn't inside the cabin anymore. He was standing in the middle of a storm that stretched endlessly into darkness. The wind howled with voices, the raindrops slashed at his skin like icy claws, and above him loomed a sky with no stars, only shifting, distorted faces screaming silently down at him. The ghostly woman was there too, her eyes glowing brighter now, her mouth twisted into a grin that stretched far too wide. Her hair whipped violently around her face, though there was no wind touching her. She hovered just above the storm, pulling at him with invisible strings. The traveler tried to move, to run, but his legs refused him. His boots sank into the ground, though when he looked down, there was no ground at all. Only a bottomless pit of shadows, writhing and stretching upwards like hands reaching for him. The whispers became clearer now. They were calling his name. Dozens of voices, layered together, echoing from every direction. Some voices sounded familiar, though he couldn't place where he had heard them before. His heart pounded, the cold gnawed at his lungs, and dread pressed in from every side. The woman drifted closer, her hollow eyes fixing on him like a predator studying prey. Her whisper coiled through the storm, curling directly into his ear. "This is where they all come. This is where you belong." And then, something shifted. For the first time, he saw another shape in the storm. Not her, not the countless shadows clawing at him, but something else, faint, glowing, like a small flicker of light trying to cut through the black. It was moving toward him. The flicker in the dark Milky Way ghost. The traveler's breath came in short, ragged bursts as his eyes locked onto the faint glow cutting through the storm. It shimmered weakly, as if it might vanish at any moment, but compared to the endless shadows clawing at him, it was the only sign of hope. The woman's hollow face twisted, her grin faltering for the first time. She turned her head sharply toward the light, her expression warping into something between anger and fear. The storm responded with a violent surge, the wind shrieking, the rain slicing harder, as though the very darkness was trying to snuff the glow out. The traveler felt it then, warmth brushing against his frozen skin. The glow pulsed brighter, each beat syncing with his racing heart. It wasn't just light. It was alive. The whispers that had been clawing at his ears began to shift, some turning softer, as if hidden voices were trying to guide him instead of trap him. The woman hissed, her voice no longer soft but sharp as broken glass. "Don't look at it. Don't follow it. It doesn't belong to you." But his gaze was fixed, unblinking, drawn in by the glow like a drowning man spotting a lighthouse. The pit beneath him clawed harder, shadows rising to pull him under, but the light surged once more, wrapping faint tendrils of golden warmth around his chest. For the first time since the nightmare began, he felt his body respond. His boots lifted slightly from the writhing darkness, as though the glow was pulling him free. The storm screamed louder, the woman's face contorting into rage, her skeletal hands lashing out toward him. "You are mine," she shrieked, her voice splitting the air like thunder. But the light only grew stronger. Now it was close enough for him to see it clearly, a figure, cloaked in radiance, faceless yet strangely familiar. It reached out a hand, steady and calm, waiting for him to take it. The traveler hesitated, caught between two forces, the ghostly woman, desperate to drag him into the abyss, and the glowing figure, silently offering escape. His heart pounded with the weight of the choice. The choice in the storm cloud with rain ghost sparkles. The traveler's hand trembled, rain dripping from his fingertips as he reached toward the glow. The storm raged harder, like an angry beast, shaking the very ground beneath him. The ghostly woman lunged forward, her skeletal fingers clawing at his sleeve, her voice tearing through the night. "Don't leave me. You belong here, with me." Her touch was ice, draining what little warmth remained in his body. But the glow, oh, the glow, pushed back, spilling golden light across his arm. For the first time since his nightmare began, he felt strong. His chest filled with air, his heartbeat no longer stumbling, but steady. The glowing figure extended its hand further, waiting with an unshakable stillness. No words, no force, just presence. The traveler felt the pull of safety, of peace. Summoning every ounce of courage, he wrenched his arm from the ghostly woman's grip and thrust his hand into the glow. The moment their hands touched, the world shattered. A blinding warmth shot through his veins, driving the storm back with a roar like 1,000 bells. The whispers turned into a single, harmonious hum, washing over him like a lullaby. The pit beneath him collapsed into nothingness, vanishing as though it had never been. The woman's scream pierced the night. Her face twisted in rage, her body unraveling into streaks of shadow as the light consumed her. With one final, desperate shriek, "He will never escape me," she was gone. And then, silence. The rain slowed to a gentle drizzle. The howling wind faded into a whisper. The traveler blinked against the glow, but now he could see clearly. He was no longer standing in the storm. Instead, he stood in a vast forest, bathed in moonlight. The trees swayed gently, their leaves whispering secrets in the cool night air. The glowing figure still stood before him, its faceless form calm and radiant. The traveler opened his mouth to speak, but the figure simply raised a hand and touched his chest lightly. In that instant, the traveler felt something awaken inside him, a spark of strength, a fire that had long been buried beneath fear. And then, as silently as it appeared, the figure dissolved into 1,000 golden motes, drifting upward into the starry sky. The traveler was alone again. But for the first time, he did not feel afraid. The moonlit forest evergreen tree crescent moon ghost. The traveler stood motionless, rain still dripping from his cloak, though the storm had vanished. Above him stretched a sky of impossible clarity, jeweled with countless stars. The moon hung low and silver, bathing the forest in a soft glow. The air smelled of wet earth and pine, fresh and alive. For the first time since his nightmare began, his chest did not ache with fear. He breathed deeply, and the forest seemed to breathe with him. The trees swayed gently, their leaves whispering like old storytellers, as though welcoming him into their secret world. But silence in the forest was never complete. There were sounds now, the soft hoot of an owl, the distant croak of frogs, the patter of droplets falling from high branches. These sounds were grounding, yet beneath them lingered something stranger, a faint hum, like a low chant carried on the wind. Curious and cautious, the traveler began to walk. Each step sank into moss that glowed faintly under the moonlight, as if the forest itself had been painted with hidden light. The trees grew taller and denser the deeper he went, their trunks twisting as if alive. Shadows danced across the path, though there was no wind strong enough to move them. The hum grew louder. Soon, he realized it wasn't the forest but something, or someone, within it. A circle of stones appeared ahead, half buried in the earth, ancient and cracked. Moss covered their faces, but faint carvings glimmered in the moonlight, symbols older than language, swirling and spiraling into shapes that made his skin prickle. At the center of the stone circle stood a single tree unlike the others. Its bark was black as coal, yet its branches shimmered with silver leaves. The hum resonated from it, vibrating in the traveler's bones. He stepped closer, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. The tree pulsed with light, and a shape began to emerge from its trunk. A face, no, many faces, shifting and flickering like water. Some were kind, some twisted in pain, some staring with hollow eyes. The traveler froze as the voices merged into one. You escaped the storm, but the forest remembers. The shadows are not gone. They are waiting. The silver leaves rustled, though there was no wind. The ground trembled beneath him. The traveler realized this was no sanctuary. This forest was alive, watching, testing, waiting. And deep within its whispering heart, something darker had yet to awaken. The spirit in the silver leaves, crescent moon leaf fluttering in wind ghost. The traveler's breath caught as the black-barked tree shifted again, its silver leaves shimmering like stars caught in a breeze that did not exist. The many faces in its trunk flickered restlessly, until one finally settled. It was calm, almost human, with eyes that glowed like pale moonlight. The hum that had filled the forest softened, reshaping itself into a voice both soothing and sorrowful. Do not fear me, it said, the sound echoing inside the traveler's mind more than his ears. I am not of the shadows that chase you. I am of the forest, bound to its memory. The traveler stepped cautiously closer, his boots sinking into the damp moss. He could feel the energy of the tree thrumming beneath his skin, like the earth itself was alive. "Why am I here?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "What does this place want from me?" The spirit's glowing eyes blinked slowly, like a flame wavering in the wind. "The storm brought you to the threshold," it said. "You are caught between two worlds, the world of the living and the world of memory. The shadows you fear are echoes of lives that never left. They feed on fear, and in fear, they grow strong." The traveler's pulse quickened. He remembered the shapes in the storm, the cold whispers, the endless running. "Then, am I trapped?" he asked. The spirit's expression shifted, the silver glow flickering like candlelight. "Trapped only if you choose to be. But every path has its price. You may walk deeper and face what waits in the heart of the forest, or you may turn back and wander forever in the storm that hunts you." The forest around him seemed to stir at the words, the wind carrying faint sighs, as if countless unseen voices were listening. The moonlit path ahead glowed faintly, leading deeper between the tall trees. The spirit's face began to fade back into the bark, the hum growing distant. But before disappearing fully, it whispered, "Be careful. Not all who whisper in the forest mean you harm. But not all who smile are your friends." Then it was gone, and the forest fell silent again. The traveler stood frozen, heart pounding, staring at the path ahead. Somewhere deeper in the woods, he thought he saw a faint lantern glow, or was it just another trick of the moonlight? The lantern in the mist, red paper lantern, evergreen tree ghost. The traveler's breath came in shallow waves as he stood in the silence. The path before him was bathed in silver, yet somewhere farther ahead, a faint golden glow shimmered, soft and unsteady, like the flame of a lantern. He hesitated. The spirit's warning still echoed inside his mind, "Not all who smile are your friends." But the warm glow was so different from the shadows and whispers that had stalked him. It felt human. His feet began to move before his thoughts could catch up. Step by step, he followed the light. The forest floor grew softer beneath him, covered with thick moss and damp leaves. The air chilled further, and with every exhale, his breath swirled into mist. The lantern swayed gently, as if carried by an unseen hand. Yet no footsteps crunched, no branches snapped. The traveler's skin prickled as he realized, he could only see the glow, not the bearer. "Hello?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Is someone there?" For a moment, nothing answered. Only the sigh of the wind between the trees. Then, faintly, a voice drifted through the air. "Keep walking, you are close." The words were gentle, almost kind. But there was something strange about the way they lingered, as though spoken not beside him, but inside his chest. The lantern light drew him onward until he entered a clearing. Moonlight spilled across the space, revealing an old wooden bridge stretching over a stream that glistened like black glass. The lantern now hung from the center of the bridge, swaying slowly, though no rope held it. The traveler froze. His instincts screamed. Something about the bridge felt wrong. Its planks looked sturdy, yet shadows shifted beneath it, rippling like liquid darkness. The voice came again, softer, closer. Cross, and you will find safety. Cross, and the storm will not touch you. The traveler's hands shook. The glow was warm, inviting. But the water below whispered faintly, a chorus of voices rising from the current. Don't cross, don't trust the light. He stood at the edge of the bridge, torn between the promise of safety and the warning of the unseen. Somewhere deep in the forest, the wind howled, carrying with it the distant sound of something hunting. Crossing the bridge at night, crescent moon ghost. The traveler's heart pounded against his ribs as he stared at the swaying lantern. The golden glow pulsed gently, like a heartbeat in the night, calling him closer. Behind him, the forest seemed to tighten, branches curling like grasping fingers. The unseen thing he had heard earlier now crept nearer, the faint crunch of leaves, the hiss of breath just beyond sight. He had no choice. Whatever lay behind him felt far worse than what awaited across the bridge. Taking a deep breath, he placed one foot on the first plank. It creaked under his weight, the sound sharp and unnatural in the silence. Step by step, he moved forward. The lantern swayed as if guiding him, always just a little further ahead. Halfway across, the whispers rose from the water below, louder now, urgent. Turn back, don't trust, it is not what it seems. He froze, clutching the rope railings. Looking down, the stream was no longer water. It churned with pale, shifting faces, mouths open in silent screams, eyes staring upward as if begging for release. His stomach lurched. The voice of the lantern spoke again, soft and coaxing. Do not look down. Only forward. I will take you where you need to go. The traveler forced himself to move, one trembling step at a time. The planks beneath him groaned louder with each stride, as though the bridge itself wanted to give way. He reached the lantern at the center, and stopped. For the first time, he saw it clearly. It did not hang from a hook or rope. It floated in midair, suspended by nothing. The flame inside was not a flame at all, but an unblinking golden eye, staring directly into his soul. The traveler staggered back, nearly losing his balance. His grip tightened on the ropes as the lantern voice changed, its sweetness gone, replaced with something hollow, echoing. You should not have crossed. Now, you belong to me. The bridge shuddered violently, as though the eye itself was alive and feeding. Behind him, the thing in the forest let out a shrill scream and surged closer, forcing him to make a terrible choice. To keep running toward the far side, or to leap into the churning stream of faces below. The far side man running Milky Way ghost. The traveler's breath caught in his chest, his instincts screaming for survival. He did not dare leap into the writhing stream of faces. Whatever lived beneath the surface seemed far more cursed than what lay ahead. With every ounce of strength, he bolted forward, gripping the rope rail as the bridge rocked violently beneath his feet. The golden eye behind him flared brighter, flooding the night with a sickly glow. The whispers rose into anguished shrieks, the faces below stretching upward as if desperate to pull him down. The traveler did not look back. His boots pounded against the planks, each step threatening to splinter the wood. At last, his foot slammed onto solid ground. He stumbled into the dirt, chest heaving, and the bridge behind him shuddered with a final groan. The lantern eye let out a howl that rattled through the forest, before the bridge snapped and collapsed into the screaming waters below. Silence followed. The traveler lay trembling, staring into the shadows ahead. Slowly, he rose, brushing off the dirt from his hands. He had escaped, but he knew something had followed him across. The forest here was different. The trees grew taller, darker, their bark streaked with silver veins that pulsed faintly like blood in veins. Between them hung threads of mist, curling and moving as if alive. And then he heard it, soft footsteps, matching his own. He turned sharply, but saw nothing. The air grew colder, every breath he took condensing into thick fog. From the mist ahead, a shape began to form. Not a shadow, not a ghost, but something else entirely. It looked like a man, but too tall, his limbs stretched unnaturally long. Its face was obscured, covered by a veil of shifting smoke, and yet the traveler could feel its eyes on him, piercing, curious, and hungry. The figure raised a hand and beckoned. "You crossed when no other dared," it said in a voice like cracking branches. "Now, you will walk deeper, into my forest." The traveler's legs trembled. He had come this far. There was no turning back. With a cautious step, he followed. The mist swallowed him whole. The veil of mist fog bust in silhouette evergreen tree. The traveler's steps crunched softly against the damp earth as he followed the mist-shrouded figure deeper into the forest. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but something stronger, a pull he could not name, urged him to keep walking. The mist grew denser, clinging to his skin, dampening his clothes, and curling in his hair as though it wished to weave him into its fabric. The figure ahead moved soundlessly, its long limbs gliding without disturbing the ground. The traveler noticed that wherever it stepped, the trees seemed to bow slightly, their silver-veined bark pulsing brighter, as if alive and obeying. The sight made his stomach tighten with dread. Finally, they stopped at a clearing. The mist thickened until it formed walls, enclosing the space like a room. At the center stood a stone altar, ancient and cracked, with strange carvings that writhed when stared at too long. The figure turned to face him, the veil of smoke across its face shifting and flickering like a living mask. "This forest whispers because it remembers," the figure said. "Every soul that crossed here has left a mark. And you, traveler, you are no different." It stretched out a hand. From the altar, the carvings glowed faintly, revealing ghostly silhouettes of people, men, women, and children, trapped within the stone, their mouths open in silent screams. The traveler's heart pounded as he realized these were the souls of those who had walked before him. The figure tilted its head. "Give me your name, and I will write it among them. In exchange, you will walk unharmed, free of fear, free of pain." The traveler's throat went dry. He felt the weight of the forest pressing in. The whispers had returned, circling him, urging him to accept. And yet, another voice stirred faintly in his chest, his own, urging him not to surrender. If he gave his name, would he lose himself? Would he, too, become one of those shadows etched into the altar? His hand clenched into a fist. He had a choice: speak his name, or defy the figure and risk whatever came next. The name unspoken new moon evergreen tree bust in silhouette. The traveler's lips trembled as the figure's words echoed through the mist. "Give me your name, and you will walk unharmed." The offer hung heavy, like poisoned honey. For a fleeting moment, he imagined how simple it would be, to surrender, to let the forest consume his name and, with it, his fear. But then, something deep inside rebelled. He pressed his lips together and shook his head. "No," he whispered, his voice unsteady but firm. "My name is mine. You cannot have it." The figure froze. The mist around it coiled tighter, almost violently, as though the forest itself was displeased. From the altar, the ghostly faces began to writhe faster, their mouths opening wider in silent, eternal agony. The ground shuddered beneath the traveler's feet. "You refuse?" the figure hissed, its voice no longer soft, but sharp as a blade. "No one refuses the whispering forest. Names are the keys. Without one, you cannot pass." The traveler swallowed hard, his fists clenching. "Then I will walk without a key." The mist surged toward him like a wave, icy tendrils wrapping around his arms and throat, trying to choke the breath from his lungs. He staggered, fighting to stay upright. The altar pulsed brighter, releasing a wailing sound that pierced his skull like needles. He could hear the trapped souls screaming, urging him to give in. But instead of collapsing, he dug his heels into the earth, his heart pounding like a war drum. His silence was his weapon. His refusal was his shield. The figure screamed, its misty veil tearing open to reveal not a face, but a gaping void, an endless blackness swirling with voices. It lunged toward him, clawed hands outstretched. Yet the traveler, refusing to speak, refused to yield, found himself glowing faintly, as if his defiance alone sparked a hidden light. The forest roared in fury, trees groaning and bending as though in pain. And then, suddenly, the mist recoiled. The figure vanished, dissolving back into the shadows of the trees. The altar went dark. The whispers fell silent. The traveler collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. For the first time since entering the forest, there was quiet, eerily quiet. But the silence was not safety. It was a warning. He had defied the forest, yes. But now, it was watching. Waiting. The forest sets a trap, evergreen tree, spider web. The silence that followed was unbearable. No whispers, no footsteps, no wails from the altar. Only the heavy sound of his own breathing. The traveler rose shakily, every instinct screaming at him to run, yet his legs felt like they were sinking into the earth. The trees loomed taller now, their branches twisted into claw-like shapes. The path he had followed before was gone, swallowed by roots and thorns that seemed to have grown in moments. The forest was rearranging itself. It wanted him lost. As he stumbled forward, a faint glow appeared between the trunks, a lantern swaying in the distance. Relief surged through him. Perhaps another wanderer, another soul who had survived? He hurried toward it, ignoring the warning prickling at the back of his neck. But as he drew near, the truth revealed itself. The lantern was not held by a human hand. It dangled from a skeletal arm, the bones blackened, the hand fused to the handle. The light within wasn't fire, it was something alive, a writhing mass of tiny glowing insects, pulsing in unison like a beating heart. The traveler froze, his breath catching. And then he heard it, come closer. The voice wasn't spoken aloud but whispered directly into his mind. The lantern swayed, beckoning. Against his will, his feet moved a step closer. Then another. The forest floor beneath him shifted, the soil no longer solid but soft, like flesh. He looked down in horror to see faces pressing up from the earth, their eyes open, their mouths gasping silently, as if drowning in dirt. Panic seized him. He tried to pull away, but the ground clung to his boots like tar. The skeletal lantern swung harder, its light flashing like a signal. From all directions, shadows began to gather, elongated forms slipping between the trees, circling him slowly. The forest had laid its trap. The traveler realized, with a sinking dread, that his refusal to give up his name had not freed him. It had marked him. And now, the whispering forest wanted to claim him another way. The lantern's secret fire candle bust in silhouette. The shadows closed in. They were taller than men, their limbs stretched and bent unnaturally, their eyes burning faintly like embers in the dark. The traveler's chest tightened, his heart hammering so loudly it felt as if the forest itself could hear it. The skeletal lantern swayed violently now, and the insects within pulsed brighter, casting twisted shapes across the trees. The whisper returned, sharper, more insistent. "Closer, closer, or you will not leave." He struggled against the ground, his boots sinking deeper into the fleshy soil. The faces beneath writhed, their mouths opening wider as though eager to swallow him whole. Desperation clawed at him, and then, a thought struck like lightning. The forest had tried to take his name. The altar demanded his identity. The shadows thrived on his fear. What if the lantern was another riddle, a trick designed to lure him deeper? Gathering every shred of courage, the traveler forced his body still. He stopped struggling, stopped stepping forward. The lantern dangled only a few paces away, glowing like a trap waiting for prey. He whispered under his breath, "You don't control me. I am not yours." The ground quivered. The faces beneath him stilled, their eyes rolling back into darkness. The shadows circling him faltered, their outlines flickering as if uncertain. For the first time, the traveler noticed something strange. The insects inside the lantern weren't moving randomly. They pulsed in a rhythm. A beat. A pattern. It was almost like a heartbeat. And then realization struck. It was his own heartbeat. The lantern wasn't just bait, it was tethered to him, feeding on his fear and life force, syncing with his pulse. If the lantern could steal his strength, maybe it could be broken. With a surge of defiance, he yanked one foot free from the sticky soil and hurled himself toward the skeletal arm. His hand closed around the lantern, the glass burning hot against his skin. The insects within swarmed violently, their glow flaring like fire about to explode. The shadows screeched, lunging toward him. And in that instant, he raised the lantern high and slammed it against the nearest tree. It shattered. The forest erupted with a scream. The shadows dissolved like smoke in wind, the soil hardened beneath his feet, and the air filled with the sharp smell of burning wood and something far fouler. But as the insects scattered, fleeing into the canopy, one remained. It landed on his wrist, glowing faintly, and then sank into his skin. The traveler gasped, clutching his arm. He hadn't escaped unscathed. Something of the lantern was now inside him. The parasite within Spider Fire New Moon. The forest was quiet now. Too quiet. The kind of silence that feels heavy, pressing against the ears like a weight. The traveler staggered back, his hand gripping the place where the glowing insect had burrowed into his skin. At first, there was only a faint warmth, like a coal resting beneath his flesh. But then, slowly, steadily, it began to move. A crawling sensation crept along his veins, snaking up his arm toward his shoulder. His breath came in sharp gasps. He tore at his sleeve, desperate to claw it out, but there was nothing visible, only the faint glow beneath his skin, pulsing with his heartbeat. And then came the whisper. Not from the forest this time, but from inside his head. "We are bound now. You are never alone." His knees buckled, and he stumbled against a tree. His vision flickered, shadows stretching unnaturally, shapes moving where there should be none. For a moment, he saw eyes staring at him from the bark, mouths forming in the wood, smiling cruelly. But as he blinked, the visions shifted. The forest didn't just look threatening anymore, it looked mapped. Every root, every hidden hollow, every lurking shadow shimmered with a faint outline, like he could sense what lay ahead before he stepped into it. The parasite wasn't only a curse. It was giving him sight. The traveler's chest heaved. His instincts screamed at him to panic, to tear at his arm until he bled. But another voice, the parasite's, whispered reassurance. Fear no longer feeds them. With me, you will walk unseen. With me, you will endure. He sank to the forest floor, clutching his head, torn between horror and awe. He realized, with cold certainty, that he hadn't destroyed the forest's power. He had absorbed a piece of it. But what if the price was his humanity? The glow beneath his skin brightened once, twice, then dimmed, settling into a steady rhythm with his pulse. The forest was still, waiting. And for the first time, he felt that it was waiting for him. The gift or the trap? Evergreen tree spider skull. The traveler rose to his feet, shaky but different. The forest no longer loomed with blind terror, it unfolded before him like a dark map etched with secrets. Roots glowed faintly in his mind, hidden paths revealed themselves, and he could sense the things that lurked just out of sight. When he stepped forward, the whisper returned. Left, not right, the shadows wait there. He obeyed without thinking, veering onto a path half covered by tangled vines. Moments later, he heard it, the crack of a branch behind him, the soft scrape of claws. Something had been waiting where he would have walked. His heart pounded, but he hadn't been caught. The parasite pulsed warmly under his skin, like it was pleased. For the first time since entering the cursed forest, the traveler felt a flicker of power. His fear dulled, replaced by a strange confidence. He began to move more quickly, guided by the whispers, slipping past dangers he would have never survived before. Shadows that once stalked him seemed to glance away, as if they couldn't see him anymore. But with every step, he noticed something unsettling. His thoughts didn't always feel like his own. When he reached for his flask of water, the voice said, "No, you don't need that. We will keep you alive." When hunger twisted his stomach, the whisper soothed him. The forest will feed us. Wait. He shivered, realizing the truth. The parasite was more than a guide, it was slowly weaving its will into his choices. And yet, it had saved him. He might already be dead without it. As night deepened, the traveler stood at a crossroads in the forest. To the left, the air shimmered with a faint, unnatural glow, like the heart of the curse itself. To the right, he sensed the faint outline of an old village, buried beneath vines, filled with whispers of the lost. The parasite pulsed eagerly. The heart, take us to the heart. But his instincts screamed otherwise. Would he obey the parasite, or fight its guidance? The Village of Whispers, derelict house, new moon ghost. The traveler ignored the parasite's urging and turned toward the faint outline of the village. The parasite pulsed angrily under his skin, but he pressed forward, his breath slow, deliberate. The air grew colder with each step, heavy with a silence that was not truly silent. There were whispers in it, countless voices, too soft to make out yet impossible to ignore. The village emerged from the trees like a corpse half buried in the earth. Roofs sagged under the weight of vines, doors hung from rusted hinges, and windows gaped like empty eyes. Moss spread across cobblestones, swallowing what had once been paths. The traveler stopped at the entrance, the parasite squirming violently, as if it did not want him here. But the whispers grew louder. He stepped into the village. The first house he passed had its door broken open. Inside, the furniture was toppled, the hearth filled with ash long gone cold. A chair creaked, though no one sat there. When he turned, he saw faint shapes, figures moving in and out of the houses, translucent, faceless, their motions endlessly repeating as though trapped in memories. One figure drifted toward him. A woman, tall, her long hair floating as if underwater. Her voice, when it came, was soft and fractured. "You should not have come." The parasite flared, a hot spike of pain in his chest. "Ignore her. She is nothing but shadow. We are your truth." But the woman leaned closer, her face almost clear now. He saw her eyes, wide with terror, and her lips formed words the parasite tried to smother. "It feeds, it fed on us all. That thing inside you, it will never let you leave." The traveler stumbled back, clutching his chest. His breath came in ragged bursts. The ghosts around him had turned to stare, their eyeless faces fixed on him. The parasite roared inside his skull, its voice jagged with fury. "Do not listen. They are lies. Take us to the heart." The woman's figure reached out her hand, pale and trembling. Her whisper was the faintest thread of sound, but he felt it carved straight into him. "Resist, before it is too late." And then, the entire village seemed to breathe. Doors slammed shut, windows shattered inward, and a great groaning sound rose from beneath the ground, as though the earth itself wanted to swallow him whole. The traveler stood frozen between two forces, his unwanted companion urging him onward, and the dead pleading for his resistance. Which would he believe? The ghost's hand candle ghost evergreen tree. The traveler's hand shook as he extended it toward the ghostly woman. The parasite writhed violently, its voice shrieking inside his skull. No! Fool! Do not touch her. She is the grave, she is the chains, she is death. But his trembling fingers brushed hers anyway. Her hand was cold, weightless, but it did not pass through him as he had expected. Instead, her grip tightened with surprising strength, and for a moment, the whispers around the village fell silent. The other ghosts bowed their heads, as though in reverence. The woman's face grew clearer. She had once been beautiful, though her cheeks were hollow and her eyes shadowed with sorrow. You carry what destroyed us, she said softly, her voice no longer broken. It bound itself to you, just as it bound itself to this land. You cannot escape it by fleeing. You must face it. The parasite bellowed with rage. Lies. She is trying to sever us, to kill you. Without me, you are nothing. Without me, you are weak. The traveler's heart thundered, caught between the two voices. But the ghost woman squeezed his hand again and leaned close, her breath like frost against his ear. There is a place where the bond can be broken. The old well, at the village's heart. It was there the hunger first entered. Go, before it consumes what remains of you. The ground beneath them trembled. The traveler's vision blurred as the parasite dug deeper into his flesh, tendrils wrapping around his veins like chains. You dare betray me, it hissed, its voice dripping with venom. I gave you strength. I gave you survival. Without me, you will rot like these phantoms. But the woman's eyes shone with something the parasite could not. Mimic, grief, yes, but also truth. The traveler nodded, gripping her hand tighter. Together, they turned toward the crumbling path at the center of the village. At its end, half hidden by weeds and rubble, stood the outline of the well. The whispers of the dead rose again, louder this time, as though guiding him forward. And deep inside, the parasite screamed. The descent into the well new moon ghost. The well loomed before him like a mouth of stone, black and bottomless. The crumbling rim was slick with moss, and the air above it carried a stench of damp earth and something older, something rotten that had never belonged to the living world. The traveler peered inside. His breath clouded in the air, though no wind touched him. A rickety wooden ladder descended into the dark, its rungs brittle with age. Somewhere below, water dripped steadily, echoing like the ticking of a clock counting down. The ghost woman stood beside him, her pale hand resting lightly on his arm. "This place birthed it," she whispered. When they lowered the bucket, it rose. The hunger, the parasite, it seeped into the villagers, one by one. And now it has you. The parasite inside him writhed violently, its whispers now a roar. "Fool! You dare step into its grave? You will not sever me, you will drown with me." His chest tightened as the thing pulsed in his veins, but he forced himself forward. His foot pressed onto the first rung of the ladder, which creaked under his weight. For a moment, he thought it might splinter, but it held. Down he climbed, the ghost woman floating just behind, her glow faint but steady. The deeper he went, the colder the air became. His fingers numbed, his breath rattled, and his heart pounded like a drum in the hollow silence. Halfway down, the parasite hissed directly into his mind. "I can end this for you. Just let go. One slip. Fall into the black, and you will never feel pain again." The traveler's grip weakened. His foot slid. The darkness below seemed to open wider, hungry for him. But then, the ghost woman's voice cut through the despair. "Hold on. You are stronger than it. You are still you." Shaking, he clung to the ladder and forced himself lower. Finally, his boots touched the damp stones at the bottom. Before him stretched a cavern, walls glistening with black slime. At its center, the well's water glowed faintly green, rippling as though something beneath stirred. And then, from the water, a shape began to rise. A figure. Tall. Twisted. Made of shadows, yet wearing a face eerily like his own. The parasite's laughter filled his skull. At last. The source. The reflection. You cannot fight what you already are. The shadow's reflection, new moon bust in silhouette. The figure rising from the glowing water solidified with every ripple. Its limbs elongated, twisted yet familiar, until the traveler felt his stomach lurch, because it was him. Not just a likeness, but a perfect reflection. Same face, same eyes, but emptied of warmth. The skin hung pale and sickly, the mouth curled into a grin that was all teeth and cruelty. Its eyes gleamed black, with pinpricks of red where pupils should have been. The shadow self tilted its head. When it spoke, the traveler heard his own voice, but warped, doubled, and hollow. You came seeking freedom, it murmured. But you brought me with you. I am not the parasite. I am what you allowed it to make of you. The traveler staggered back, his chest constricting. No, you're a trick. You're not me. The ghost woman floated closer, her glow trembling. It feeds on reflection, she whispered. On the darkest part of the soul. This is not only the parasite, it is you, stripped of hope. If you give in, this shell will take your place in the world above." The shadow laughed, a sound like splintering wood. "She lies. I am your strength, your hunger, your truth. Without me, you are nothing." The parasite inside the traveler writhed violently, as though desperate to merge with its reflection. His body shook, the whispers inside him screaming louder. "Join with it. Be whole." The water rippled outward in concentric circles, and the shadow began stepping forward, its bare feet leaving black prints on the stone floor. Each step echoed like a heartbeat, slow and deliberate. The traveler's breath quickened. His hands trembled. For the first time, he realized this was not just about surviving the night. This was about deciding who he truly was. Behind him, the ghost woman's voice steadied. "You can face it. But you must choose, destroy the reflection, or embrace it, and risk losing yourself forever." The shadow raised its arms, beckoning him closer. "Come. End your struggle. Be me." Confronting the shadow, candle bust-in silhouette crossed swords. The traveler stood frozen between two choices, fight or surrender. His lungs burned with the weight of the parasite, his chest heavy as the shadow self crept closer. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the whispers and the fear, a quiet truth stirred: this thing is part of me. Clenching his fists, he steadied his breath. "If you are me," he said, voice trembling but firm, "then I don't need to destroy you. I need to face you." The shadow tilted its head, smirking with sharp teeth. "Brave words," it mocked. "But you've hidden from me all your life. Every doubt, every failure, every envy you swallowed, I grew stronger. You can't kill me. You never could." The ghost woman hovered silently behind him, her glow dimming as though this battle could not be hers to fight. The traveler stepped forward, his reflection in the glowing water trembling with his movement. "Maybe I can't kill you," he admitted. His voice grew steadier, stronger. "But I can stop running. I can accept that you exist. And if I accept you, you lose your power." The shadow's grin faltered, the edges of its body flickering like smoke. Its voice cracked. "No. If you accept me, I vanish. I need your fear." The parasite inside him thrashed wildly, a scream vibrating through his bones. "No. Don't listen. I am your hunger. Your strength." The traveler shut his eyes, letting the fear pass over him like a wave. He thought of the life he wanted beyond the forest, the freedom, the sunlight, the sound of rain on rooftops without terror shadowing it. He opened his eyes and whispered, "I accept you. You are part of me. But you don't control me." The shadow screamed, its form unraveling like black smoke whipped by a storm. The parasite within him shrieked in unison, twisting, writhing, until it too began to burn away. The echoes shook the chamber, the water thrashing against the stone. And then, silence. The traveler fell to his knees, gasping. The heaviness in his chest lifted. The whispers were gone. The water's glow softened to a gentle shimmer, calm and still. The ghost woman knelt beside him, her pale hand brushing the air just above his shoulder. You did what few can. You faced yourself, and you chose freedom. But as she spoke, a faint ripple stirred the water again, as if something below had not yet fully gone. The depths beneath water wave I candle. The traveler's chest rose and fell, each breath lighter than it had been in years. Relief washed through him like fresh rain. The parasite was gone, or so he thought. But the water at his feet quivered, sending out small, deliberate ripples. The ghost woman's face grew grave. Her glow, which had brightened at his victory, dimmed once more. "It isn't over," she whispered. From the black water, an eye opened. Vast, lidless, and ancient, it glowed faintly green like swamp fire. It was not the shadow he had faced, nor the parasite he had burned away. This was older, deeper. A presence that had been waiting long before he entered the whispering forest. The surface broke with a slow, deliberate rise. A massive shape moved beneath the water, too large to fully see. Only fragments emerged, a claw that scraped stone, a face half hidden in darkness, and a voice that spoke directly into the traveler's mind. "Child of flesh, you think you are free? You have peeled away the layers, but I am the root. I am the hunger that fed your parasite. I am the silence that spawned your shadow. I am the first whisper this forest ever carried." The traveler staggered back, heart pounding. This was not a reflection of him. This was the core of the forest itself, the true entity behind the hauntings, the endless pull that had lured countless wanderers into its depths. The ghost woman looked at him, eyes wide with sorrow. "You faced your darkness. But now, you must face the forests. The creatures I narrowed," its voice curling like smoke. "If you wish to leave, you must bargain. If you wish to live, you must kneel." The traveler's fists clenched. He had conquered the parasite, defeated his shadow. But this was something far greater. A final test. He whispered to himself, steadying his breath. "Then I will face even you." The water churned violently, the entire chamber trembling as the ancient thing began to rise fully from the depths. The bargain of Shadow's new moon evergreen tree eye. The chamber shook as the ancient entity emerged further from the black waters. The sound was not like waves, it was the groaning of roots being torn, the low hum of stone grinding against itself, as though the forest itself was shifting to accommodate its master. The traveler stood firm, though his knees wanted to buckle. The massive eye fixed on him, unblinking, its light casting eerie green reflections across the damp cavern walls. "You have shed your shadow," the voice thundered in his mind, "and burned the parasite from your soul. But do not mistake yourself for free. You are still tethered. All who wander the whispering forest are mine in the end." The traveler's heart pounded, but he raised his chin. "I will not kneel." A pause. Then a low, rumbling laugh shook the cavern. "Then bargain. If you will not kneel, you must offer something of equal weight. Your voice. Your memory. Your name. What will you surrender, child? Of flesh?" The ghost woman moved closer, her glow flickering like a candle caught in a storm. "Be careful," she whispered. "It does not bargain fairly. What it takes, it never returns." The traveler clenched his fists. His mind raced. His name? Without it, he would wander the world forgotten, hollow. His memory? Without it, he would never know who he was, never remember his triumphs. His voice? Without it, he could never speak his truth again, never call for help. But then, he remembered the parasite. How it had clung to him. How this very forest had fed it. He understood. He took a step forward, his eyes burning with new resolve. "You want something of me? Then take my fear." The chamber fell silent. Even the dripping water paused, as though the whole world was listening. The great eye narrowed. "Your fear?" "Yes," the traveler said, his voice steady. "It has weighed me down. It has given you power over me. Take it. Take all of it. I offer it freely." The entity growled low, a sound like roots splintering. Then, slowly, it leaned closer. The cavern darkened until there was only the burning green eye and the small, trembling figure of the traveler. "So be it," the voice whispered like 1,000 leaves rustling at once. "I accept your fear." The air rushed from the traveler's lungs. Something tore loose inside him, like a chain snapping after centuries of strain. For a heartbeat, he thought he would collapse, empty. But then, there was clarity. The darkness that had always stalked him, the trembling that had lived in his bones, was gone. The entity drew back, its eye dimming. Without his fear to feed on, it began to sink into the waters, roaring in frustration. "Foolish child, without fear, you will not know caution. Without fear, you will walk into fire. You may survive me, but the world will eat you alive." The traveler breathed deeply, his chest light. For the first time in his life, he felt unshackled. He whispered, "Then I will face it as I am." The cavern trembled one last time, and the waters grew still. The battle of shadows and light crossed swords, Milky Way evergreen tree. The forest quaked as though it could not bear the weight of two powers colliding. The silver roots pulsed like veins of lightning, spreading brilliance across the ground, while the shadow tendrils lashed upward, striking against them with venomous force. The traveler's palms burned against the glowing earth, the light within him surging, rising like a tide that could no longer be held back. He felt his heartbeat echo in the roots, as if the forest had merged with him, their energies entwined. Every breath he took was the forest's breath, every tremor in the ground the thrum of his own pulse. The shadow entity loomed taller, its coal-like eyes blazing, its hollow form swelling with power. It lashed a whip of darkness toward him, striking his chest. The blow sent him crashing back, the silver glow flickering where his hands had been. For a moment, pain threatened to swallow him whole. The woman cried out, her voice desperate, "You must stand. If the light fails, the forest dies, and so do we all." The traveler forced himself to rise, trembling but unbroken. He looked at the towering void before him, and for the first time, he did not see only terror. He saw weakness. The shadows flickered where the light had burned them, leaving wounds like cracks in a mirror. He lifted his hands, no longer pressing against the earth but holding them outward, palms open to the night. The silver glow rose from the roots and climbed his arms, wrapping him in threads of shimmering light. He felt himself become a vessel, not just of his own will, but of every living thing that had ever whispered through this forest. The entity roared, a sound that shook the air like a collapsing mountain. It charged, shadow form stretching into claws. But the traveler did not step back. He thrust his hands forward, releasing the gathered brilliance in a single, searing wave. The light struck the entity with a force that ripped through the night. The forest lit up like dawn had arrived in an instant, flooding every leaf, every stone, every root. The shadows writhed, shrieking as the light pierced them, tearing them apart thread by thread. The entity staggered, its hollow face splintering, the coal-like eyes flickering in desperation. "You cannot destroy me," it bellowed. "I will return. Darkness always returns." The traveler's voice rang clear, steady as the light that surrounded him. "Perhaps. But not tonight. Not here." With a final surge, the light expanded, engulfing the shadow entirely. The forest shook with a last cry, and then, silence. The darkness was gone, burned away into nothing. The silver roots glowed peacefully again, their light no longer frantic but calm, steady, like a heartbeat finding its natural rhythm. The woman's form brightened once more, her trembling eased, her eyes full of gratitude. "You have done what no one before could," she whispered. "You have reminded the forest of its strength. The traveler sank to his knees, exhausted, but a deep calm washed over him. The weight that had pressed on his chest for so long was gone, replaced by quiet, by stillness, by peace. Above, the stars blazed brighter than ever, as though the heavens themselves had borne witness to the battle, and approved. The night was safe again. The forest sleeps again, Milky Way evergreen tree sparkles. The air was different now. The sharpness of fear had dissolved, leaving behind a stillness that wrapped around the traveler like a warm blanket. The silver roots beneath him pulsed faintly, no longer with urgency, but with a steady rhythm, like the quiet heartbeat of the earth itself. The woman stood before him, her figure luminous, her expression serene. The shadows that had once strained at the edges of her form were gone, replaced by a glow so soft it seemed woven from moonlight. "You have given the forest peace," she said, her voice carrying the hush of wind through branches. "And in return, it will give you rest." The traveler closed his eyes for a moment, and in that stillness, he heard it, the forest breathing. Not in fear, not in struggle, but in harmony. The leaves whispered not warnings, but lullabies. The stream nearby hummed gently, its trickle sounding like the soft notes of a distant song. Even the roots, warm beneath his palms, seemed to hum with gratitude. The woman reached out, placing a hand over his heart. Her touch was neither heavy nor light, but perfectly balanced, as though she carried both the weight of ages and the softness of a dream. "The darkness will always try to return," she whispered. "But so will the light. And tonight, you have shown the balance can be kept." Her form shimmered, then slowly faded, dissolving back into the glow of the forest itself. The traveler did not reach to hold her, he knew she was not gone. She was everywhere now. In the roots, in the leaves, in the silver glow that would guide wanderers long after he was gone. He lay back on the earth, his body finally giving in to its exhaustion. The roots cradled him as though they had been waiting all along to become his bed. Above, the stars glittered, calm and steady, no longer watching in tension but in gentle blessing. As his eyes grew heavy, the last thing he heard was the whisper of the forest itself, speaking in a voice only he could hear. "Rest now, traveler. You are safe. You are home." And with that, he drifted into sleep, wrapped in silver light, while the forest, too, finally rested. Milky Way sparkles, the whispering forest had survived. The night was quiet. The world was at peace.